Good morning. This is Rahul Reddy, we are live from Houston, Texas. We do have a news today. The October visa bulletin does come in, and there are some things people need to know. So that's the reason we have this update. Along with me is my business partner, Emily Neumann and Stephen Brown. Emily, I see that the priority dates, yesterday some people asked the parrot testing, that how the parrot would predict that we're not going to see much faster movement in EB2 and EB3 for Indian nationals. Looks like not much movement at all. If there is a final action date, it has just moved by a week or so. But in the final action, in the filing dates, it did move a little bit, not by a significant, by about 6 months in EB2 and EB3 category. And EB2 hasn't done any good at all. So, Emily, what do we expect coming forward in this year, fiscal year 2025? As people already know that the year starts on October 1st for USCIS and the visa numbers.
Yes, big takeaways for me are that we still already have enough pending 485s for people in EB2 and EB3 to use up all of next year's green cards. That's why the date is not moving.
Did you say this year's green card or next year's green card?
Both, really. We talked before about the number of 485s. Unfortunately, the inventory data has not been updated recently, so we're going off slightly old numbers. But based on the information that we do have, my prediction is it's going to be 2030 before we make it back to the October 2020 dates. So to get through all the people from now through December 2014, which was how far we got in October 2020 with the whole visa bulletin EB2, EB3 debacle, it's going to take us till almost 2030 to get back to that date. So
approximately 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I looked into
on top of that, I think EB1, well, yes, I mean, with the date for filing, it only moved forward 2 months. And I think that's because, again, based on some outdated numbers, but it looks to me, my estimate is there's already about 11,000 485s pending for people in EB1 India that have priority dates before 2023. Historically, even with the spillover from EB1 rest of world, India has been getting about 10,000 a year. They were getting more during the COVID years because of the family-based spillover, but that's over. So we're back to our kind of low level, which might be 10,000 a year. So they already have 10,000 485s in their hand. They can't take in any more. On top of that, in 2023, USCIS approved about 10,000 more EB1 I-140s for India. So it's going to take a year to make it through all of those. And then in 2024, USCIS, I'm predicting, is going to be approving about 11,000. So we only have data through 3 quarters. So we're adding another 11,000 that will have 2024 priority dates. It's going to take another year to get through those. So if you're looking at filing EB1 now and aren't porting an old priority date, so you're going to have an October 1st, 2024 priority date, for example, plan on waiting 3 years before your date becomes current to be able to file the 485. Those are my takeaways. It is going to take us till 2030 to get back to where we were in 2020. And it's going to take 3 years to make it through all the current people who have EB1s approved in India.
Not a good news for Indian nationals. The main reason for it is that people already know that there is a per country quota. No country can take more than 7% if all the numbers are getting filled. Now, previously to 2017, 2018, though, the rest of the world was not using enough green cards. So the leftover green cards used to fall into the lap of the Indian nationals who have been waiting. And because the rest of the world is also using a lot of green cards right now, Indians in each category, for example, EB1 category is 2,800, EB2 category is 2,800, EB3 category is 2,800. So that includes the family members. So approximately around 2,000, approximately around maybe 1,500 families were able to use in EB2 and EB3. As we know, there is no per country limit in H-1B and L-1, but when it comes to the green card, that's where the problem comes in. That's where the bottleneck comes in. Stephen, you are the alternative guy who has creative solutions. We are, at least I am a very old traditional guy, and I'm done with this. And I know that to tell my client right now who's filing the green card or who's in the waiting list after where the priority date is January 2015, they have to wait a long wait. What other creative solutions do you have? Can you sue the government to move the priority date to be current?
No, I mean, look, they have complete discretion over the visa bulletin. We know this year they have used all of the employment based except for the EB5 unreserved, or excuse me, the EB5 set asides are the only one that have not all been used this year as of this date. Maybe that gets done here in the next 20 days. EB5 remains the only category current, Rahul. The EB5 set asides are the only one current for Indian and Chinese nationals. You know, we talked about EB1, we talked about country caps, and this is a analogy or a kind of anecdotal story I was telling Emily. You know, the Nobel Peace Prizes this year, Rahul, are October 7th through 14th. If you're an Indian national that gets a Nobel Peace Prize this year, here next month, you're waiting 3 years to be able to file your green card because of the country limits, right? Because of the country caps. That's ridiculous. And then we look at EB2 and EB3 that have, Emily, what did we come up with? About a 75-year wait?
Yeah, 75 years.
I'll let Emily go through the analysis, but 75-year wait for EB2 and EB3, you know, you have max outs and all that. Again, look, EB5 is a not easy category. I get that, but it, you know, if it's something that works for you, it could be a solution out of this. Get your interim benefits, freeze your child's age, and potentially get your green card because it's the only one current. Again, I get it. It's not, you know, look, $800,000 for targeted is a lot. But if you have the ability to do it, it might be an advantageous solution for you.
Stephen, you have given an analogy of Nobel Prize, but you know, extraordinary ability persons is what you're speaking about. Then I think so. Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai also falls into that EB1 category. They are extraordinary. They're having a critical roles, and their salaries compensation is very good, and so even they have to wait. If they were in line right now as a CEO of the companies, they still have to wait. But I think so. Your route of EB5. Of course, they do have the $800,000. I bet they do. Those are the kind of people where probably, I mean, not just Satya Nadella, but anybody who could afford $800,000 plus should consider EB5.
There's a lot of changes with the 2022 law for EB5, and I don't want to get too in depth about that. We have 2 older videos to watch, but there are more creative ways than just liquid cash, you know, gifts, loans, you know, home equity lines of credit are available. If this is an option you want, again, I get it, you know, it's a high dollar amount for the investment, but if you're looking for your options, take a look. But yeah, it's, you know, I don't want to dwell on EB5, but that is the category that remains current. How long is it going to be current? We don't know. When we did our live a couple weeks ago with our colleague Joey Barnett from Woolsdorf, their folks think sometime in the spring 2025 we might start seeing priority dates for Indian and Chinese nationals on the visa bulletin, you know, for that. But again, I think the big takeaway, EB1, 3 years behind if you file today and you're not porting it, 75-year wait for EB2 and EB3, another 5 years to even get caught up to where we were in 2020. We're not going to get the spill across because rest of the world is taking. We've used all the visas this year except for EB5 unreserved. So we're not going to get the spill up to EB1. And I think, as far as I know, family-based, I'm sure is getting used a lot. I'm sure there's going to be some potentially, but it's not going to be like it was in 2020, 2021.
So this year we had about 20,000 extra green cards for the employment base because of the COVID side effects where people were unable to use it. That fell extra for the green cards. Still, we don't see much improvement in the October visa bulletin. People are asking questions on our visa because we're live here. Why is this October visa bulletin so crucial? It's every month visa bulletin comes in. Why is October visa bulletin more crucial, Emily?
Yeah, this is, we are getting a fresh set of 140,000 green cards on October 1st. So this tells us the date movement in the October visa bulletin tells us how long, how long it might take to use up those 140,000 green cards, especially the dates for filing. Since we've had those going back to 2015, they've generally been a prediction of where the date will be by the end of the fiscal year. So if we're looking at October EB1, the final action date, sorry, let me get to my page here, is in February 2022. The filing date in October is April 2022. There's a 2-month difference between those dates. That tells me that USCIS or Department of State is predicting that EB1 might only move 2 months. The final action date might move 2 months in this entire fiscal year. And that makes sense because we know there are already 10,000 people waiting with 485s pending in the EB1 category for India. That's enough to use up the entire year's worth of green cards. Same thing with EB2, EB3. With a 6-month difference between the filing date and the final action date, that tells me that it's going to take between now and the end of the fiscal year, the final action date might only move 6 months forward in those categories, which is not a good sign, obviously. So for people that have been waiting, hoping the dates might move, we might get some windfall of green cards. It's clearly not going to happen. And now, or at least November, is going to be the time where you need to act on reform. We've talked every 2 years. We have this lame duck session where the Fairness for High Skilled Work Immigrants Act or the EAGLE Act or some form of eliminating the per country cap, which is causing all of these issues. The time will be November to start pushing for that after the election, before the new Congress comes into play. And every year for the last 10 years, every 2 years, more people are co-sponsoring those bills. They get closer and closer to actually passing. They pass one house and not the other. They pass the other the next year. We're getting closer and closer every year. So please, now is going to be the time to actually push for this. When you see the numbers, you see the October bulletin. If you look at the number of I-140s already approved, waiting for the date to become current, EB2 India is 300,000 people. They only get 2,800 a year. That's 114 years. So if you are just coming to the US,
Emily, you are wrong in your calculation. And always, most of the time, your predictions didn't went through properly in the prior date. But that does not count the family members, Emily. You forgot
right? Exactly. And so
that's double. It's 114, 200 and some years. Okay.
Yeah. EB3, there's already 100,000 people with approved EB3s with the priority date not current. So if we're getting 2,800 a year, that's going to be 36 years. But again, as you mentioned, that's counting the number of petitions is not the same as the number of people. Each one of those petitions represents 2 or 3 people. So we have to double that. If we put those two together, there are a total of 425,000 people waiting in EB2 or EB3 India. We can combine them because if you have an EB2, you can usually qualify for EB3. So if we divide that by 5,600, which is the number of green cards available, that's 75 years. So we're talking somewhere between 75 and 150 years, depending on how many dependents people have. if you are just now getting here and starting that process today. So if you're a 25-year-old, you just came here, got your F1, got your master's degree, and switched over to your H-1B, just now filing your perm, you're going to be 100 before you can file the 485. Something's got to change here, and we can't keep relying on executive actions to do it. We've got to get Congress to see this problem and actually fix it. And November is going to be the time to make that happen.
Emily, why is November the time? Why not September? Why not October? Why not 3 months before? Why November?
Yeah, I wanted to hit on that. So I had a couple meetings last month with congressmen here, with business leaders in the Houston area, you know, hospitals and home builders and all that, talking about immigration and the business impact, right? And there is some areas of bipartisan support on immigration that don't just involve the border, right? That impact the business community. But they both said none of this is getting touched until November. Why? Because the election. Nobody is going out there and sticking their neck out and, you know, maybe hurting the party, helping the other party, whatever, until after the election. Now, after the election, like Emily said, there are going to be people that are voted out. There are going to be people that, you know, that this is it. This is my last hurrah. But also we got now this 2 more year window before the next election cycle. So there is, as one of the congressmen put it, is more likely to be statesman-like, right? Instead of just party policy and partisan actions. So I think there is interest on even conservatives. They're going to tie it a lot with the border, but there are aspects that they know that their, you know, business impacts have. So I know it feels like it's not helping writing these letters, but it does. There are congressmen out there that are staunch Republicans that understand there are changes needing to be made. From what 1970s laws is where we came up with the green card numbers and the caps. The world's different from 1970.
Anything else, guys, before I go to the questions?
Not for me.
Emily, is it going to be 140,000 this year? Do we know it's going to be 140,000 this year, or it's going to be more?
We don't know yet. Those numbers won't come out for a little while because we need to see where we ended up at September 30th. The fiscal year is not done yet. Once we know the exact number of family-based that were issued by September 30th of this year, that will determine whether there's any extra that come from the unused family-based this year. I don't think there's going to be a ton, maybe similar to the current year where there were about 20,000. It might be less than that. I don't think there'd be more than that for sure. So it's going to be somewhere between 140 and 160.
Just quickly spot checking it, I don't think there was much movement on family-based at all. I know F2A for India stayed pretty steady.
Yeah, I feel like the only movement would be if the consulates again did a terrible job of adjudicating, which they do seem to be continuing that trend. There are so many people that are documentarily qualified in the family-based categories that are not getting interviews. So maybe we'll get some spillover from that, but not much.
A lot of people are asking questions with regards to prediction of the final action date movement. As Emily has pointed out before, though, the filing dates in October visa bulletin is practically what the USCIS, what the State Department is telling should be the final action date at the most. That's their prediction. Of course, they are not right. We are not right. Most people are not right in this one because it's very hard to determine. But if somebody asked me, what is the prediction of the final action date? I would say, this is what the State Department is predicting, that should be the final action date by the end of September of 2024. But of course, things will change. Now, even though the priority date may not be current, it may take about 75 years for a lot of people, as Emily has pointed out, may not happen. We strongly recommend everybody to file a form as soon as possible, get an I-140 approval, because otherwise you will get the I-1, you will not be able to extend the H-1B beyond 6 years. Even if you're L1, even if you're L2, even if you're H-4 EAD, you can still file an I-140 application. Even if you're L1, who knows? Things will change. Can the sky fall down and priority date become current? Can the law pass and they remove the per country limit? Yes, all these things can happen, and then the priority date may become current. We should be so. Don't hesitate in filing the labor certification I-140. Stephen, do they count the entire family members as one in the 140,000 or 2,800 the employment quota, or do they count each family member as separate? So let's say there are one guy who's the main applicant, wife and 2 kids. Is it counted as 1 or is it counted as 4?
No, that's 4, right? So it's each individual goes into that. So Emily, I think we got 2,800 EB2 and EB3 each year. That's everybody, family members included. You know, I try to look at the math as maybe about 1.5, you know, as a decent average. Maybe it's a little higher. I mean, it's really, you know, what, a little over 1,000 that I think when we figure family member, a little over 1,500 when we include family members of family units getting adjustments. So considering they took in 300,000 I-140s, that's not a lot to go around. Real quick here, we just got the update, and it's kind of what we anticipated. Jackie, one of the attorneys in our office, just messaged here. Both family-based and employment-based are going to use dates of filing. That's kind of what we expected, but it's good to confirm from USCIS that they're going to use the dates of filing. So, Jackie, thank you for shooting that over.
Yeah, typically in the month of October, though, they do accept the filing dates. Not all the time, but most of the time in October, because it's.
Yeah, I would have been surprised if they didn't, but it's good to have it confirmed.
Yeah, and why do they do that? It's because they know USCIS and Department of State are going to take a year to process these cases. So if we only have 1 year before the visas run out for this year, they've got to take in as many as possible in October so that they have the entire year to adjudicate them so that they don't waste any.
Emily,
something to keep in mind on that, if you are current in your final action date and you've been pending, get it. You know, we're talking about all this numbers. Look, I don't know if we're going to see retrogression like we did in 2022, but as more cases come in, that is always a possibility. Nobody can predict the visa bulletin. So try to get your green card, whether it's contacting your congressman or litigation on your 485. Get it, you know, get the green card, get out of this roller coaster of waiting month to month on your visa bulletin.
Stephen, we have a solution for the H-1B people. They can use the priority date. They can extend the H-1B, not a problem. What about the L-1A people, L-1B people? If their I-140 is approved, can they extend the L-1A? What are the options for them? Or L-1B?
No, and that was something Emily and I were talking about this morning, especially for the L-1A. H-1B is the only one, well, of the 2 that lets you extend past the limitation, right? So if you're on an L-1A and you file your EB-1C today, right, we talked about it, 3-year wait for you to become current if you're not porting an older priority date. You might max out on that 7 years depending on when you start. So my advice, 1, start that process as early as possible. Like you said, get your spot in line. But you got to look at other visa options. You may an O1, an H-1B, go through the lottery. Maybe you know, a TN if you're Canadian or Mexican or whatever. Now, immigrant intent is going to be an issue as well. There's ways to work out strategically on how to make that work. But you know, be very cautious on that. But look at, you know, the H-1B lottery. Look at going with another category that'll let you continue to extend as well.
So if they change from L1A to H1, they can still use the EB1C if they get the I-140 approval in EB1C?
Yeah, there's no requirement, and this is something we talk about a lot. There's no requirement that you be on an L1A. Now, is it easy? Because if you have an L1A, can we take a lot of the same, you know, the same evidence and rewrite things so you qualify? Sure, for the EB1C. But I've, you know, done H1B to EB1C. You could hypothetically go H4 to EB1C if you've had that 3-year, you know, 1 year within the last 3. There's no requirement that you be on an L1A to do an EB1C. You could be abroad and not in the U.S., right? Just do your time, your 1 year within the last 3, file the EB-1C and still work abroad. We're seeing that with some of these L1s that might max out, that companies are thinking about that, okay, he's over there, he's kind of maxed out his time. Maybe we get him over there until he becomes current. He's working in that managerial role already. So again, it is about, immigration planning to steal something from our estate planning colleagues on how you go about this, both as a company and an individual. What does 2025 look like, but what does the next 3 years, 4 years down the road look like for your immigration journey, right?
Stephen, you said the priority dates for the EB-5 are current for certain categories, and you said that they may be backlogged soon, especially for Indian nationals, very similar to Chinese nationals, most probably for them too. But we all know that we can port the date from EB-2, EB-3 to EB-1. Can we not do the same thing for EB-5?
No, so EB-5 you can't. EB-5, once you file that I-526, you're going to get a new priority date, so you cannot port from EB-1, 2, or 3 to EB-5. Something we talked about a couple of weeks ago is get in early. If there is retrogression, you got yourself in line, and right now, right, you can file concurrently with your 485. At least go get those interim benefits. Lock in the ages and everything. It's good right now for EB-5. Get the interim benefits, set your priority date. That way, if there is retrogression, you're already in line.
Emily? Yep.
A couple of questions that came up for people who filed back already in October 2020 or in when their date was current. They filed the 485 and it's still pending, and now it's current again. What can those people do to actually get the green card? We see a lot of times the case status changes to case remains pending because an immigrant visa number is not available. And now one is available. Your final action date is current again. How do you get USCIS to wake up and adjudicate it? One thing you can try to do is submit a supplement J. If you've done the transfer of underlying basis to go from EB2 to EB3 or EB3 to back to EB2, and now you're current in EB3, submit another supplement J is one option to try to get things to wake up. Beyond that, litigation, really. At this point, the case has been pending for 4 years. It's easy to show that that's an unreasonable delay. Get it over with. File a lawsuit if you're not seeing action in the month of October.
And we're also, kind of looking at this, Emily, and this is something you and I talked about today, is this is how it'll be if they follow the law and go based off priority date order. And a lot of these that filed in 2020 didn't. We know of 2014 priority dates that got adjudicated, and we're now at 2012, 2013 still. And so they obviously did not follow that. So we're looking at an unlawful withholding, arguably, too, right? They did not follow the law when it came to processing these.
Rejoy has this question. His priority date is August 2024. Can he expect his L1A is maxing out on June 2026? I definitely recommend him to file for the H1B in the quota of 2025, and of course, in March of 2025, in March of 2026. The reason is that don't rely on the priority date to become current. Have an alternative plan of getting the H1B. That's one thing that you should consider very seriously.
Yeah, and you can also recapture any time you spend outside the U.S. So you can take some strategic trips over the next 2 years to be able to buy that time back and hopefully get enough time to get the 485 filed.
Why, a lot of people ask me a question, why is the EB1 not moving forward for Indian nationals? One reason what we see is that there has been a significant improvement in approval ratings of the EB1C and also EB1A category. And a lot of people are cutting the lines right now to moving to EB1A and also EB1C category. Now, people may ask the question, how do you cut the lines? Let's say if you are an EB2 and EB3, and now if you want to categorize yourself into extraordinary ability, which you can watch the YouTube that we made, all right? And then you are going from EB3 to EB2 and your priority date, and you're moving to EB1. That's one way of doing it. Same thing with EB1C. People are moving out to Canada and then moving back or moving to India and coming back. I know that out of the top 5 companies in the world as a market capital, 2 companies, they are moving their employees to Canada and with an intention to bring them back so that they can apply an EB1C category, which is considered to be for the multinational executive person. So a lot of people are doing it. That's something people may consider doing it to get the green card faster.
Sampath on YouTube asked an interesting question. I think there should be an alternate solution other than removing the country quota as something more Indians pour over in the time. Do you have any other solutions? Well, I think the last bill that was proposed that addressed this had, what, a 10-year phase-in period? So anybody that's currently going through the green card process wouldn't be impacted. It would be about 10 years before we removed it completely. Ultimately, my opinion, it's a line. There's a line now. I have my belief that there shouldn't be caps on employment base. You know, you're either extraordinary ability or you're testing the labor market. I'm never going to get elected to Congress, though. But yeah, I think
never say never.
But the last bill that was proposed that had some legs on this had a 10-year phase-in period, so it wouldn't impact anybody that's in the line right now. I saw somebody else ask 2014 priority date, May 2014 EB2. Would you consider waiting on EB2 or going outside the U.S. to convert to EB1? You know, always going to be a personal choice, but I know we have seen individuals do this, right? They're a managerial role right now in the U.S., and so the company has overseas operations, and so hey, we'll have you go manage our overseas team for a year and a half, and then look at an EB1C. We've certainly seen people doing it. There's no issues with it. That's what the law allows.
What I would do is that if I've already filed the 485 application, though, I probably would not take the path of moving to another country and coming back. But if I have not filed the 485, as you know that you can't file the 485, then it would be a right choice, I think so, too, if you have a choice to do to EB1C category. That's what I would do. I'm not telling, as Stephen has pointed out, it's personal choice. I'm just telling my personal choice.
Why can't folks get the I-140 EAD? Ask Department of Homeland Security. They have the authority to do it. They would just have to promulgate regulations to do it, like they did the H-4 EAD, OPT. Both of those lawsuits said they had that authority. So that's up to DHS to do. And you can, I think, you can recommend regulatory changes on the Federal Register. Obviously, they don't have to listen, but yeah, wholly within Department of Homeland Security's power.
I think so. Right now, our focus, Reddy Neumann Brown focus would be on the legislation, because lame duck session is where a lot of things can pass. The drastic things can be passed. Administration is not going to take any daring steps right now, because they don't want to hamper the chances of the vice president to get elected. I'm not telling which person to vote, but I'm just telling that they don't want to hamper any chances. Politically, it's very unlikely that they're going to make that administrative change right now. And especially from November to January, yeah, I mean, that's a time whether we can see the things like, for example, legislative changes, and even administrative changes too. Even after November election, though, Biden is not going away until January of 2025. He will still be the president of America until January of 2025. I don't know the exact date, but January of 2025. He could take some of those decisions at that point of time. So the daring time for the administration or for the Congress would be from November to January. And keep watching our YouTube so that, especially in the month of November, we're going to suggest you to write letters. We expect that you all participate in contacting the congressmen, senators, and administration to get our things done. Anything else, Cindy?
Nope, I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining us, and stay tuned. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you don't already, so that you'll get updated whenever we go live for any of our breaking news sessions.